Imagine for a moment that you are on a ship in the middle of the ocean. You have a map in your hands. You trust this map completely. You navigate by it, make decisions by it, and teach your children to read it. One day, after years of sailing, you finally reach land, only to discover that the coastline on your map doesn't match the land in front of you at all. The rivers are in the wrong places. The mountains are missing. The harbors don't exist. What do? Most of us would say, work harder, sail faster, be more disciplined with the crew, improve our techniques. Very few of us would have the humility and the courage to stand on deck and say, maybe the map is wrong. My friends, that map is what we call a paradigm. A paradigm is the way you see the world, not just with your eyes, but with your mind and heart. It is the lens through which you interpret everything you experience. It is the unspoken collection of assumptions, beliefs, and stories that whisper, this is how life is, this is how people are, this is what matters. Most of the time, we don't even know we have a paradigm. We think we are seeing reality, when in truth we are seeing our mental map of reality. And here is the sobering truth: if the map is inaccurate, no amount of positive attitude, hard work, or clever technique will get us to the right destination. We will simply arrive at the wrong place faster. Let me illustrate with a simple experience many of us have had. You're on a quiet subway car, trying to read or rest. Suddenly, a man enters with several young children. The children begin running wild, shouting, throwing things, bumping into people. The father sits down, closes his eyes, and does nothing. Minutes pass. People grow irritated. Finally, someone confronts the father. Sir, your children are disturbing everyone. Could you please control them? The man opens his eyes as if waking from a trance and says softly, Oh, I'm sorry. We just came from the hospital. Their mother died an hour ago. I don't know what to do, and I guess they don't either. In an instant, everything changes. Your irritation vanishes. Compassion floods in. You want to help. You wish you could take back every judgmental thought. Nothing on the outside changed. The children are doing exactly the same things, yet everything on the inside shifted completely. Why? Because your paradigm shifted. You received new information that instantly redrew your mental map. What you saw as irresponsibility, you now see as grief. What looked like misbehavior now looks like confusion and pain. This is the power and the limitation of paradigms. They don't just influence what we see, they determine what we see. Most of the problems we face in our families, our teams, and our communities are not problems of technique. They are problems of paradigm. We keep trying to change attitudes and behaviors on the surface while the deeper map remains untouched. And surface change, without paradigm change, is temporary at best and deceptive at worst. Think about the parent who wants a teenager to be more responsible. The parent tries incentives, punishments, lectures, guilt, every technique imaginable, yet nothing lasts. Why? Because the parent's paradigm may be, my teenager is lazy and needs to be controlled, while the teenager's paradigm is, my parent doesn't trust me and never will. As long as those maps remain unchanged, the techniques will fail. Real change, lasting change, begins with a willingness to question our own maps. It requires what someone once called the ultimate human freedom, the ability to pause between what happens to us and how we choose to respond, and in that pause, to examine the lens we are using. Ask yourself honestly, what are the things I believe about people that I have never really examined? What stories am I telling myself about why I can't change, why others won't change, why the world is the way it is? When was the last time I deliberately sought out someone who sees the world completely differently from me, and listened long enough to understand their map? My friends, the moment we become aware that we are using a map and that there are other maps available, is the moment true growth becomes possible. New information, new experiences, deeper relationships, sincere seeking. These are the ways our paradigms expand and improve. And when the paradigm shifts, everything shifts with it: our feelings, our behavior, our results, and ultimately our character. So let us have the humility to admit that our maps are incomplete. Let us have the courage to redraw them when needed. And let us commit, day by day, to see a little more clearly, to understand a little more deeply, and to love a little more fully. Because in the end, the quality of our lives is not determined by what happens to us, but by the accuracy and expansiveness of the mental maps we carry inside. A paradigm is the lens through which we see the entire world. It is not the world itself, it is our private, internal representation of the world. Everything we experience, people, events, opportunities, failures, first passes through this lens before it reaches our awareness. Most of the time we are completely unaware that the lens exists. We believe we are seeing life as it is, when in reality we are seeing life as we are. Think of it as a map you carry in your mind. This map contains rivers of belief about what is possible and impossible, mountains of assumption about human nature, cities labeled success and failure, placed exactly where your past experiences and culture told you they belong. You navigate every day using this map. You make decisions with it. You judge others by how well they fit into its geography. You feel emotions based on whether life is unfolding inside or outside its borders. The critical point is this: the map is not the territory. The streets you drew at age 10, the warnings your parents wrote in red ink, the shortcuts you discovered during painful seasons, all of it may have been accurate once, but the actual territory keeps changing, and many parts of your map were never accurate to begin with. Some were drawn by people who had their own limited or distorted maps. Some were sketched in moments of hurt or fear and then frozen forever. Because the paradigm operates below the level of conscious thought, we rarely question it. When someone behaves in a way that doesn't match our map, we don't conclude that the map might be wrong. We conclude that the person is wrong. When a strategy fails repeatedly, we don't examine the underlying assumptions. We simply try harder or blame external conditions. When relationships grow cold, we focus on communication techniques instead of asking whether we are seeing the other person accurately at all. This unconscious trust in our mental maps explains why two people can witness the identical event and walk away with completely opposite interpretations. One sees generosity, the other sees manipulation. One sees discipline, the other sees control. One sees ambition, the other sees greed. The facts haven't changed, only the maps differ. The most dangerous paradigms are the ones we inherited so early and reinforced so often that we no longer recognize them as paradigms. We think they are laws of nature. People can't be trusted. Money is the root of all evil. If I'm not hard on myself, I'll never improve. Some people are just born lucky. These silent inscriptions shape every choice we make long before we ever sit down to decide, until we become aware that we are looking at a map instead of reality itself. Genuine change remains impossible. We can rearrange the furniture of our behavior all we want, but as long as we are living on the wrong map, we will keep arriving at destinations we never intended. The first and most transformative step in any growth process is therefore the same: to step back, hold the map up to the light, and realize that what we have been calling the world is actually just our current, limited, and very human way of representing it. When the map is inaccurate, every effort applied on top of it becomes misdirected energy. You can wake up earlier, manage your time better, communicate more assertively, set clearer goals, hire the best coaches, read every productivity book, and still end up in a harbor that does not exist on the real coastline. The ship may be impeccably run, the crew perfectly disciplined, the sails trimmed to perfection, yet the entire voyage is built on a foundational error no amount of excellence in execution can correct. This is why so many highly capable people work incredibly hard for years and feel empty when they arrive. They followed their map with flawless technique right into a life that does not fit who they have become. They achieved the success the old map promised, only to discover the old map no longer represented the territory they actually wanted to live in. The same principle operates in relationships. A manager may master every leadership technique: active listening, giving feedback, recognition programs, team building exercises. Yet if the underlying paradigm is, people are basically lazy and need to be controlled, every technique will be applied through that filter and will eventually produce resentment instead of engagement. The employees feel the hidden map even when the techniques are delivered with a smile. In parenting, a father can attend every seminar on positive discipline, learn the perfect phrases, implement reward charts with military precision. Yet if his private paradigm is, children must be broken of their will early, or they will ruin their lives, the child receives the message beneath the method and learns either rebellion or self-contempt. Technique without accurate paradigm becomes manipulation wearing the mask of love. Organizations collapse under this principle constantly. Brilliant strategies, massive investment, world-class talent, all deployed on a map that no longer matches the market, the culture, or the new generation entering the workforce. The leaders double down on execution, demanding longer hours and tighter metrics, never pausing to ask whether the entire picture of reality they are using is now decades out of date. Even in personal growth, we fall into the same trap. We try to fix procrastination with better apps, fix anxiety with breathing techniques, fix broken habits with accountability partners. Yet if the paradigm underneath says, "I am broken and must force myself to be good," every technique becomes another whip. The harder we drive ourselves, the more exhausted and cynical we become, because we are trying to reach a destination that only exists on a map drawn by fear. Effort is necessary, skill is necessary, discipline is necessary, but they are all secondary. They are the sails, the rudder, the crew. The map is primary. When the map is wrong, the more skillfully you sail, the more tragically lost you become. Speed and efficiency applied to the wrong direction do not get you closer to the desired destination. They simply remove all hope of course correcting in time. The moment the paradigm shifts, the identical external reality is flooded with new meaning, and feelings change so fast it feels like someone flipped a switch inside the chest. 1 second ago the children on the subway were brats, and the father was irresponsible. The instant the new information arrives, their mother just died. Those same running, shouting children become fragile, grieving little souls doing the best they can in unspeakable pain. The father is no longer negligent, he is shattered. Irritation evaporates, compassion surges. You want to put your arms around all of them. Nothing changed in the physical world, yet everything changed inside you. This is the signature of a true paradigm shift. It is instantaneous, total, and emotionally overwhelming. It does not creep in gradually like learning a new skill. It arrives all at once, like the lights coming on in a dark room. One moment you are operating from scarcity, threat and judgment. The next moment you are operating from abundance, connection, and understanding. The behavior of others has not altered by a single degree, yet your desire to punish turns into a desire to serve in the space of a heartbeat. You see this in marriages that suddenly heal when one partner finally grasps the childhood wound behind the other's defensiveness. The defensiveness is still there, exactly as loud and sharp as yesterday, but now it is heard as pain instead of attack, and the listening partner's entire body softens. Tears replace arguments without a single technique being applied. You see it in workplaces when a leader who has labeled an employee resistant to change learns that the employee is caring for a dying parent at home. Overnight, the same questions that sounded like sabotage now sound like responsible concern for the team. Criticism turns into support, deadlines become flexible, and performance often improves dramatically because the emotional environment has been transformed by a shift no policy manual could ever produce. Even our view of ourselves can flip in an instant. A woman who has carried the paradigm, "I am too much," may hear a single sentence from someone who truly sees her says, "Your passion is a gift, not a burden," and decades of shrinking and apologizing dissolve. She stands taller, speaks louder, risks more, all because the internal lens rewrote itself in one illuminating second. The speed of the change reveals how thin the line is between one emotional reality and another. There is no gradual bridge. There is only the moment the map is replaced. This is why arguments rarely produce lasting change. They try to move people across that gap one logical inch at a time, when the human heart actually crosses it in one leap or not at all. Facts, threats, and rewards bounce off the old paradigm until something pierces through and hands the person a new one. Then the facts that were ignored yesterday become obvious today, and the behavior follows immediately. The shift is so complete that people often say afterward, "I don't know how I ever saw it the old way." That is the hallmark. The old paradigm, which moments ago felt like the only possible truth, now looks strange, limited, even embarrassing, as if you have woken from a dream and cannot imagine how the dream ever felt real. We live in an age that worships technique. We have apps for every habit, scripts for every difficult conversation, frameworks for every strategy session, step-by-step formulas for raising children, building teams, losing weight, increasing revenue, finding happiness. Bookstores overflow with methods, coaches overflow with tools, seminars overflow with 7-step processes. Yet beneath the avalanche of techniques, the same conflicts, the same divorces, the same disengaged employees, the same quiet despair keep repeating. This endless repetition happens because the majority of our chronic problems are not technique problems at all. They are paradigm problems wearing the costume of technique problems. We keep polishing the surface because we are afraid to look at the foundation. A marriage does not fall apart because the couple never learned the 5 love languages. It falls apart because one or both partners carry the unspoken map that says, "Love means never having to say you're sorry," or "If I fully open my heart, I will be abandoned again," All the date nights and communication exercises in the world become temporary bandages over that deeper belief. A company does not chronically miss its targets because the sales team needs another closing script. It misses because the executive paradigm still reads, people are expenses to be minimized, instead of people are assets to be developed. New incentives are announced every quarter, yet the culture remains extractive because the map has not moved. A teenager does not slam doors and disappear into headphones because the parents have the wrong consequences chart. The doors slam because the parent's paradigm is, my child is becoming someone I don't recognize and I must stop it. While the child's paradigm is, my parents want to control me, not understand me. Every grounding, every taken phone, every raised voice simply confirms both maps and widens the canyon. We mistake paradigm problems for technique problems because techniques are visible, measurable, teachable, and safe. Paradigms are invisible, humbling, threatening to identity, and often painful to question. It is far easier to buy another course on assertive communication than to sit in the quiet terror of asking, what if everything I believe about my spouse's motives is wrong? It is far less confronting to send a manager to leadership training than to admit the entire reward system is built on a paradigm of distrust. When we finally treat a paradigm problem with a paradigm solution, the results look miraculous to outsiders. A single honest conversation in which both people feel fully seen can rescue a marriage that 20 years of counseling never touched. One leader who begins operating from, these are volunteers who chose to follow me, instead of, these are employees who have to do what I say, can transform a toxic culture in months. The techniques barely change, the map does, and the techniques that used to fail suddenly work, or become unnecessary altogether. Until we learn to distinguish between the two kinds of problems, we will keep exhausting ourselves fixing symptoms while the root remains untouched, like doctors prescribing stronger painkillers for a broken bone that needs to be set. True change, the kind that lasts a lifetime and reshapes character, never begins with a new technique, a better schedule, or a stronger why. It begins the moment a person stops, often in discomfort or crisis, and asks one quiet, frightening question. What if the way I have been seeing this is not the only way, and maybe not even the right way? That single question is the crack through which light enters. It is the willingness to hold one's own map up to the window and notice the smudges, the erased coastlines, the places marked, here there be dragons, that turned out to be safe harbors. Most people never ask it, not because they are stupid or stubborn, but because the map feels like self. To question the map feels like questioning one's own sanity, worth, or survival. Real change therefore requires two rare qualities, humility and courage. Humility to admit, I have been navigating with a drawing that is at least partly fiction, and courage to stay in the disorientation that follows when the old map is folded away and the new one has not yet been drawn. In that empty space, panic whispers that if the old map goes, everything collapses. Yet that same empty space is the only place where an accurate map can be sketched. The process of expanding the map is simple but not easy. It is the deliberate choice to seek out experiences, people, books, silences, and questions that do not fit the current borders. It is listening to the colleague you have labeled difficult, long enough to discover the principle behind their resistance. It is reading the author you have dismissed as wrong until one sentence pierces like an arrow and you realize the arrow was aimed at your blind spot. It is sitting with your teenager in silence instead of lecture until you finally see the fear hiding behind the eye roll. Every time you allow new, accurate information to touch an old assumption, the paradigm stretches. A tiny shift at first, almost imperceptible, then another and another, until one day the entire landscape looks different, and you wonder how you ever lived inside such a small country. This is why the people who grow most are not the ones with the strongest willpower. They are the ones with the softest beliefs, the ones willing to trade certainty for accuracy again and again. They understand that character is not built by clinging to a map, but by constantly redrawing it closer to truth. The beautiful paradox is that the more often you admit your map was wrong, the more trustworthy you become to yourself and others. Your judgments soften, your empathy deepens, your decisions improve, and your influence grows, not because you finally found the perfect map, but because you have made a life practice of examining and expanding the one you carry. So here we stand, each of us holding an invisible map that has guided every step we have ever taken. Some of these maps were handed to us at birth, others we drew in moments of triumph or terror, and all of them have brought us faithfully to this exact place and time. Today we have seen that the quality of our journey from this moment forward will depend less on how fast we run, how cleverly we speak, or how perfectly we execute than on one simple, ongoing choice: will we keep sailing with a map we have never truly examined, or will we develop the habit of holding it up to the light, comparing it honestly to the real territory, and redrawing it whenever love and truth require? The good news is that we do not need to see the entire coastline at once. We only need to be willing to correct the next inaccuracy we discover. One conversation that changes a heart, one apology that rebuilds a bridge, one honest look in the mirror that dissolves an old story. These are the quiet strokes that slowly turn a crude sketch into a work of art that actually leads somewhere worth going. My friends, the world is not waiting for more techniques, more effort, or more noise. It is waiting for people humble enough to admit their maps are incomplete and courageous enough to keep expanding them. When we become those people, everything around us begins to change, not because we pushed harder, but because we finally started seeing clearly. Carry your map lightly, question it often, share it generously, and never forget that the most important territory you will ever explore is not out there somewhere. It is the few inches between what happens and how you choose to see it.